Welcome to Unorganized Thought. We're calling it Unorganized Thought as a podcast.
Because we're probably going to talk for a while.
Yeah, and we'll keep it as short as we can, but it's sort of a breakdown. We're talking
Flowing thought.
Yeah, exactly. About
unorganized, if you might.
Yes.
You might call it that.
Yes, you might. We're talking about the new story mode in the new season story mode in the new season of Apex Legends. And so
right now we're on the second week with the third.
Yeah, we have the third string of dialogue.
The prologue, then the first two missions.
Yeah. And so if you're not really following it, but
this might not make
much sense to you. But if you're playing Apex and still kind of want to know about the story and maybe a bit of an analysis into it,
that's more the audience that we're working with here.
Exactly.
And
so kind of what we are, just a rundown of what has happened so far, and what the plot is of this story is that Loba has enlisted the help of the Legends to retrieve these artifacts from the alternate dimension that we saw in the Fight or Fright event challenge that happened around Halloween, I believe.
Yeah.
And so the Legends don't really fully trust her, and so
we've got some personal agendas
going on. The first dialogue, we are established with one of them who is a snitch.
Yeah.
Who wrote down everything in their first meeting with Loba and presented it to Revenant, despite everyone agreeing that Revenant shouldn't know, because in the Fight or Fright dimension, he's in charge of the games, and he's in charge of maybe even the world, you know? And so the dialogue goes through of this first prologue, and at the end, we have a narrator going all the way through, and it's sort of, we don't know who the narrator is, and right at the end they say, I kept my promise, I didn't tell you, I wrote it to you in this letter.
Which is, kind of a skeevy loop.
Yeah, and so we have someone who has betrayed Loba and potentially put the other Legends at risk.
Yeah, and I think that's mainly what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
I think is we're going to be trying to break down and figure out who we think that is, and we will be kind of talking about the other dialogue quests, but more so using them to try and figure out who this is.
Yeah, exactly. And so just to quickly go through those so that we have all the information, is that after the first retrieval of the first artifact, the first piece, Bangalore and a couple of the others, Lifeline, Caustic, I think it was mostly everyone else, decided to try and obtain some information on their own. They sent Octane undercover to obtain information from a chief of staff at Hammond, who created Revenant into what he is. And Loba is looking to do a deal with Hammond to acquire the source code, which the audience knows to be Revenant's head, the key to destroying Revenant for good, we believe. And so
they sent Octane on a date with this woman to try and find the information to discover that information. And while this happens, Wraith finds out that Watson gets knocked down, and so then she rushes in, grabs Octane, and they get out of there, and there's an argument ensues between Caustic and Loba, and then at the end of that we find out that Revenant did in fact find out about it and is there confronting them.
Yeah, and that's where we ended up. It gives us a bit of a hint that possibly what we're acquiring for Loba is what she's planning to trade Hammond because
she doesn't really know
the source
what it
code. or so we think.
Yeah.
And because in her meeting with Hammond, we learned from the reconnaissance date, we learned that Hammond is willing to do business with her, but for a price.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking that this is the price, because we know that Loba, from watching her videos and backstories and stuff, that she is trying to kill Revenant. That's kind of her whole deal is to get revenge on him. So, just to kind of go back, we want to try and figure out who the traitor is.
Yeah. And in the first dialogue, especially, there's a lot of, we think, red herrings, basically.
Yeah.
And just kind of leads to follow, and various things that are said that implicate certain people. And we, looking around, we haven't actually really seen anybody talk about this. And so we kind of wanted to bring that up and just kind of see what other people think, and just kind of be the people to put this out there. And not that we don't necessarily think no one's noticed it, but no one's really put it out there to talk about.
And so, just I think the first thing to note is, as the dialogue goes through, it keeps cutting back to a narrator.
Yeah.
Every time there's not when there's dialogue, it brings up the legend's face and then puts
And what they're saying.
and puts what they're saying in quotation marks.
Yeah.
And then there's a narrator that it goes back to where there's no face and no quotation marks. And just by looking at what the narrator says, we notice a lot of quite deliberate tropes of making
of things that other legends say, or speech patterns that they use.
Yeah, exactly. And so at first that sort of seemed like, when we saw the first one, we thought, so it's Octane talking, because one of the first narrated lines is this chica for real, which is clearly a reference to Octane.
Yeah.
And so we thought, okay, so the narrator is Octane. Then in the next line, we have all the flirting and double entendres and je ne sais quoi. And we kind of went back to that one afterwards, because we thought those are two phrases that derive from French, and that could be a red herring at towards Watson. And so we started to notice these little things sprinkled in that essentially implicate a whole bunch of different legends. And what we think that means is that the writer of the letter sprinkled in little, sayings or speech patterns of all of the legends.
To throw suspicion off themselves and onto other people.
Yeah. And so, just to kind of go through them, we have, is this chica for real, which is a reference to Octane. Double entendres and je ne sais quoi, which could be a reference to Watson. Those are both just...
They're both pretty common.
They're both pretty common sayings, but, they put je ne sais quoi in quotations, which, to not put double entendres in quotations, I feel like they're trying to draw attention to that. On one of the... after Loba says that it's in a different dimension, the narrator says an independent variable, which is something Caustic is always saying. When Mirage cracks a joke, the narrator says, Mirage really is a funny guy, which makes it seem like Mirage is narrating, because he's the kind of guy who would praise himself on making a hilarious joke. Then we have what matters is the truth, Falaji fighter, or I'm not sure completely how to pronounce that, but that's something Bloodhound says. Then the line before the end is high five, which is something Pathfinder does a lot, and then Brutta, which is what Gibraltar is always saying. And so we have all these different,
people that are implicated throughout.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's just sort of interesting to see that, and we haven't seen any breakdowns of people picking up on that yet. So we thought that we would sort of put that forward, that in case you caught one of them and thought, it ends with Brutta, it was Gibraltar.
Yeah.
There's actually hints to various legends throughout the entire
thing.
The entire thing. A few other hints to note are the narrator notes that they're disappointed that both the men and women have taken the bait of Loba's scheme. And something the narrator says is, "For obvious reasons, I am not affected," and that could
mean a
variety of things. That could refer to a robot who has no romantic, attraction.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, it could also imply that whoever the narrator is not attracted to women.
Yeah, or to Loba.
Or to Loba specifically.
Yeah.
We know from Gibraltar's character file that he had a boyfriend at one point. And so if he's gay, then for obvious reasons, he's not affected.
Yeah.
But he's a friendly dude, and so like I could see him just as easily getting entrapped in the scheme just for the thrill of it.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of another hint that we had that is in there. And then at the end, it's signed A. Smarty Pants, and that's kind of a Mirage.
That one has always kind of struck me very Mirage-esque
to say. But anyways, we sort of broke down who we know is there, because
so this was kind of something that we were looking it over yesterday, and Aidan goes, "Wait a minute," and this was a clue that I didn't pick up on the first time, and we didn't pick up until yesterday when we were transcripting the whole thing out, is that when the narrator's at the very, very beginning of it, the narrator's talking about how they're all in the back room of Mirage's bar, and they start by saying there's 11 of us in a meeting in a private room in the back. And so then, first glance, you don't really think anything of it. But then you look at the Legends roster, and there are 13, including Revenant. And so we obviously know Revenant's not here, but that still leaves 12.
Yeah.
And so that tells us that one of the Legends isn't here.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's important because we know that whoever the snitch is was there.
Yeah, because they have the information.
Because they witnessed the whole conversation and are able to set it forward. And so we sort of went through, saw who had lines, who were directly spoken to.
Yeah.
To basically figure out
who
definitely was there.
And what we got from that is that everyone that we can confirm was there, or we can confirm everyone was there except Bloodhound and Gibraltar.
Yeah. Those are the only two people who aren't directly spoken to or have any speaking lines.
Yeah. But then, however, both of them are implicated in the narrator's
and both of them are implicated as in the narrator's writing.
Yeah.
With Falagi fighter, I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, and Brudda for Gibraltar.
And so with our information, we do know that one of them was there.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, those two not having any speaking roles kind of implies to us that two things. One is that one of them is the snitch, and two is that the other one wasn't there at all,
and is completely innocent.
No information. Yeah.
But that's not entirely proven either. Because
it doesn't prove that one of them is the snitch.
Because Bloodhound's just a pretty quiet dude.
And so if Bloodhound was there, it would explain him not speaking, and Gibraltar's just not there.
Mm-hmm. And just the fact that they specifically said 11, and everyone else but those two are.
Yeah. And so unless that's some sort of mistake,
it seems like a strange detail to add, because then when you play each of the missions, Gibraltar and Bloodhound are always playable.
Yeah, implying that they are there.
That they were there and have the information. And
which is kind of strange.
It's just kind of strange that they would say 11 and then not say and Gibraltar is guarding the door, and so we'll fill him in later. Like it's just sort of strange that they would like purposefully omit another person
and not refer to
it at all.
And if it is intentional, I'm sure we'll get explanations to it later on through the story. The name of the next dialogue mission is the liberated narc, and so we believe that we're gonna find out who it is next week.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of just a fun video for us to speculate before that information comes out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, we just thought it was interesting that either Bloodhound or Gibraltar weren't there.
Yeah.
Because everybody else was spoken to, and so with only 11 people, the only two who didn't speak or were spoken to were Bloodhound and Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And so one of those two weren't there, and we just wonder why that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean that either of them are the narc. It just means that one of them definitely wasn't.
Yeah, it means one of them wasn't, and it doesn't make the other look great.
Yeah, exactly. That they would draw attention to there only being 11.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it maybe just was a miscount.
Yeah.
That they
'Cause
wrote
maybe
this.
they-
They wrote this before Loba was on the thing.
Yeah, and
they
they just
looked at their
looked-
board and counted and went okay and wrote it down.
Which
because
it's-
for them to include both Bloodhound and Gibraltar as playable
Yeah,
in each
because
of the
that's
missions,
another thing that we see. Is
that's
that
a bit
they-
strange.
They
that
they make certain characters unplayable for the missions, and so yeah, it is just kind of strange.
It's just kind of strange that if there's no alternate ending where it's either Bloodhound or Gibraltar, I think that maybe it is just like a typo.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was kind of our breakdown of what we were able to
and the
notice.
other thing is that to this point, do you remember? I don't think either of them have talked. They still haven't spoke.
Yeah.
Because there's been 3 meetings basically, the prologue, the second meeting, and the third, and still neither of them have spoke.
Yeah.
And so we still don't know.
And so I guess if you play Bloodhound or Gibraltar, I play Gibraltar.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever one you play as may have, if it is an alternate ending, whichever one you play as, that kind of proves them to be the narc in your playthrough, because that means they were at the meeting and therefore, is the one that they drew attention to as being, there are only 11 of them. But again, just because just because there's only 11 of them and one is missing and that these two are the only ones that didn't talk, that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean that they're guilty. It just means that Bloodhound doesn't talk much, and maybe they just didn't have any lines for Gibraltar to say.
Mm-hmm. But I think with that we'll kind of get into like more who we think it could be, and like other things that people said and motives.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
I think somebody of note that we were kind of looking on is Bangalore, and that she seems to have quite a choppy relationship with Loba and just doesn't like her. And then in the second dialogue mission, we see that she's basically trying to take down Loba separately, which almost exonerates her a bit,
but not exactly,
but not
because just because the narc doesn't necessarily know anything about Loba, and what Bangalore is trying to do is obtain more information about Loba, and so she could have written the note to Revenant and then just additionally wanted to find more information. So the fact that she is going against her, or at least rallying others to also go against her, doesn't necessarily clear her name. I think just also another thing to note is that the second dialogue is narrated by Mirage, and the third by Wraith, and I feel like that's a pretty fair assumption to make that those two are not.
Yeah, we don't want to completely clear them, but going through their narration, it seems kind of evident that they don't know, and they weren't the people that did it. From things like Mirage seems pretty out of the loop in his, and then in Wraith's, she says things about how she now realizes that they've gone down the worst path, and if she had any ability to navigate that, she wouldn't have told Revenant, know?
And that she likely would have said, I chose the worst path, because she would feel personally responsible for Watson being downed who she says is one of her closest
Yeah.
friends ever. You
And
know,
with
she
that-
would blame herself a lot more than she did, and to see Mirage's and Wraith's sort of inner monologue throughout
Yeah.
some of that,
Yeah.
without them sort of being like, oh, I'm without any mention of them, you know, feeling, you know, suspicious or nervous. I feel like it's a pretty good indicator
especially
that
Mirage, because he's a pretty jittery guy.
yeah, exactly. And so I feel like it's pretty safe to say that those
Yeah.
two are likely not
Yeah.
just
Not saying that they aren't, but they're
they're kind of on the back burner.
Yeah. And then another thing with that kind of continuing is that with the newest one, we kind of get a hint, or not a hint so much as Caustic kind of clears himself a bit by being so caring to Watson, because this was kind of something that we thought was coming, is they're seeing the relationship between those two. And so after this week, we kind of see is like he wouldn't have done anything that may have put her in harm's way, and so I don't really think that he would have sold them out to Revenant, when in most of the time you'd think is like, oh, well, Revenant's a bad guy, Caustic's a bad guy, it makes sense, he might just sell everybody out.
But to see how angry he got at Loba specifically, and not just feeling guilt about himself, you know, the fact that he was angry at Loba for dragging them into this, you know, one of the reasons that there could have been an added risk is telling Revenant.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
that just adds danger to the real world as well as the altered dimension.
Yeah.
You know?
And just to go back, actually, is that Wraith seemed surprised when Revenant was there.
Yeah.
You know, and so that if she had told him, then being like, realizing that it's Revenant, it would have been, that wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, and so they're just to sort of cover everything. Wraith's line when she does notice Revenant is spying on them is she hears one of her voices, her alternate dimension selves, warning her. She hears he's above you, and she says, I know who it is before I even have the chance to look up. And so I think that just means she has good instincts, and, you know...
Well, I mean, you can put it together.
You can put it together, you know, like, he's above you, we're working against Revenant. I bet it's Revenant.
Imagine Gibraltar's up there. Like the sweat is dripping.
Here I come! Yeah. But,
It
yeah.
could be Bloodhound, I suppose.
I think that just to nitpick, the fact that she knew who it was before she looked up could be her realizing, crap, I shouldn't have told him, and now I know he's here because I'm the one who told him. I don't necessarily think that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't think so, but...
Just
it
to cover
be.
everything, it could be an implication. It could be interpreted that she knows who it is before she turns around because she told him, and she knows that he's coming.
But then again, her whole thing is knowing things before they happen.
Exactly.
So,
you know?
It's not damning evidence.
Yeah. I think that, you know, it worries me that Gibraltar hasn't had any lines, because Gibraltar is my favorite character.
Yeah.
And, like... I love him to bits. He's my favorite, and it just, like, when he doesn't have any dialogue at all, it makes me nervous, because that's kind of suspicious, you know? When everyone else is kind of accounted for, except for Bloodhound. It just, like, for the only implication to be in the writing of the traitor, that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, because it doesn't fit his character. You know, Gibraltar joined the games to keep people safe. You know, like, he likes the thrill as well, but his reason for joining was because he knows people who joined the games and didn't come back. So he went in there to, like, put his rescuer skills to use, and, you know, the thrill is also part of it, because he's a giant, gentle thrill seeker. And I don't think he would endanger his friends like that. Because if Revenant finds out, he could snap and start hurting people.
Yeah,
you know?
And like, there's never been anything that implies that Gibraltar has any sympathy for Revenant. You know?
Exactly.
Like, why he would feel bad because they're not including a psychopathic murder bot.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's the kind of guy who only wants to help.
Yeah, because
And
like
so
the argument could be made that he's just kind of this big oaf and is like, I want everybody to be included. But when you really think about it, it doesn't really track with that.
yeah, that's not his character. He's when it comes down to it, he's a good person. He's
Yeah.
one of the legends who is just a good person, and I don't think that he would side with the murder robot.
No, I don't think so
You
either.
know, I think a few other people whose characters just don't really.
That's
track
where I was gonna go next. Is Octane is, I think, from the dialogue that we get from the narrator, I think Octane is just not smart enough.
Yeah,
You know, like, and not to knock him or anything, but he's just
that's just not the kind of person.
no,
that he is.
and like to be throwing references to different legends to throw the everyone off the scent. I don't think he's clever enough to do that.
Yeah, and I, you know,
Especially-
just
and but then sorry, but it's just that as more of a like a Sherlock like big reveal thing is maybe that's exactly why it
Exactly,
is him.
that's-
It's because in the third one with Wraith is he's very much just like very very stupid,
Yeah.
and so that could be maybe like I was Professor Octane the whole time.
yeah, and
You know?
that's not really his character at all, and I don't think they're gonna try and change. Well, at least I'm hoping that they're not gonna try and betray anyone's character.
Yeah,
Too
for the
badly,
sake
you know,
of a
like
reveal.
there has to be a specific reason why any of the legends did this. Because if you make anyone's favorite character the narc, people maybe aren't going to be too happy about that,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And so, but just to give Octane a little bit more credit than he deserves, he does point out in the second dialogue that Loba doesn't really have anything to offer him. He says, he points out, almost as sort of a coy, if he is the narc, almost as sort of a coy little, you know, what can she do for me? Make me run faster? And then he goes, wait, can she do that?
Yeah.
But I think that was sort of just to dismiss it, you know, because what does she really actually have to offer Octane? And so, you know, I don't think that he's the type to sort of, you know, mastermind this betrayal.
This plot. Yeah.
But he
Again,
he could be.
You never
He could
know
be.
who it is.
You never really know.
we don't want to count anybody out, but we just want to give reasons to maybe help you and to just voice what we're thinking and give reasons as to who it might be, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think that
I think Watson, though, is pretty clear after getting shot. I don't think that they would, just story-wise, I don't think she'd take a bullet and then have to wheelchair out and be like, it was me the whole time.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think that she would do that. That Watson has somewhat of a what seems to be like a father figure relationship with Caustic is a bit troubling. You know, like she could
Troubling
have
for her future,
troubling
yes.
for her bright future. But then again, like she's just sort of this super pure like kid who wants to like kind of just have some fun and prove herself and make her father proud, and you know, I don't really see any motive there. Like she designed the force field for the games. She's an engineer. Maybe she's trying to get a shoe in with Hammond, but then again, how is helping Revenant necessarily gonna
looking at it,
do that?
somebody that also I think could be a top contender is Crypto. Because he doesn't talk a whole lot, and he would be smart enough to try and throw people under the bus and to mimic other people,
And Crypto's been up to some stuff.
and he's sketchy, you know, like we don't really know necessarily
Anything.
what he wants at any given time.
You know, I think he's trying to find the truth. He's trying to hack everything and gain the information he needs to try and exonerate himself.
And maybe
from
he
his...
thinks causing chaos over here will help him get some information from somewhere else.
Yeah, that could be the case. You know, he kind of seems like the type who is a bit of a loner.
Yeah, and he'll do what he has to serve his own motives.
Exactly. and he does have sort of an overarching motive. Like characters like Gibraltar and Octane don't really have that sort of bigger, overarching thing that they're working towards. But Crypto does, and he's been doing some crazy stuff. He destroyed the
pillar thing,
the tower that keeps the animals out of King's Canyon, and so like, who knows why he did that?
Maybe that's out there. We don't know.
I assume it's all part of his
because
master
I think
plan.
He wanted to get the games moved to World's Edge, maybe.
Yeah, and so but why?
But why? Yeah.
Like what?
Well, now
Hammond is at World's Edge, so there could be a bigger conspiracy going on that this is going to tie into.
Yeah.
I don't really see much motive for Bloodhound other than maybe Hammond was responsible for the epicenter, which
we don't know.
Like we don't know. Right. Like I think that you said that his brother was the one who we see in that clip getting overtaken by the ice. But we just don't have enough information there.
Why he'd bother telling Revenant? It doesn't really.
Yeah. I think that other than that, Pathfinder, I don't think would do that to his friends.
Yeah. The only thing I could think for Pathfinder is just he's so friendly that he's like, I want everyone to be included,
But he does also say he's scared of Revenant.
Yes.
And I don't think that he would want him around.
No.
Lifeline, again, also just wants to help people and wants to kind of expose her parents for the crooks
and
that
Loba
they are.
has something to offer her.
Yeah. And so, those ones don't really match their profile. So I guess, like, sort of what we're coming down to is that that Bloodhound and Gibraltar are kind of, it's a little bit sus that they don't speak and that there's only 11 legends in the meeting room. We think that Bangalore has maybe a little bit of a motive because she doesn't like what Loba is doing.
There's some sort of rivalry between her and Loba.
But she also does mention that she only went into the alternate dimension to keep everyone else from dying.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but she could also just be saying that. Another similarity with Bangalore is that the narrator in the first letter says, I expect that from the men, but scanning the room, the women have taken the bait as well. They're all idiots. And Bangalore in the second part, showcases her disdain for the fact that everyone just fell for it, which is sort of similar to that bit in the first one. She says, she bats her eyelashes and you all fall in line, advancing into unknown territories to obtain some trinket. We don't even know what this hunk of junk is. So that's sort of a bit of a similarity to the original narration. I guess other than that, there's a little bit of suspicion on Crypto. And then I guess the final sort of possibility is that it's Loba. Is that Loba is pulling some sort of
larger plan.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually quite possible because we know that what she's currently trying to do is make a deal with Hammond to obtain the source code, aka Revenant's head.
Yeah.
And so for her to be doing sort of sneaky dealings with Revenant at the same time, I feel like is entirely possible because there's no way she's gonna fork over anything that she doesn't have to, and we know that she's trying to obtain something to trade with Hammond, and I'm assuming that it's what we're gathering. It's what we're gathering.
And another thing is just that doesn't break Loba's character really.
Yeah,
she's a sketchy thief,
Yeah, exactly.
And so and she doesn't have a ton of. She doesn't have really the opposing lore to that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Something else that I was just thinking with Bangalore that I was just going to mention to you is that she fought for the IMC, which was considered the bad guys in the Titanfall previously.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. Could just be a connection.
Yeah, and I don't know what Hammond's affiliation with the IMC
I'm not sure
is.
either.
That's something that maybe we'll do a little bit more research on.
But I do think that that Loba herself is a pretty good consideration.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, I have certain theories regarding the whole Hammond Revenant situation.
Mm-hmm.
We just sort of rewatched some of the cinematic trailers and stuff
And lore bits.
and lore bits, and Revenant, he was obviously created by Hammond.
Yeah.
He seems to do mercenary work on a freelance level, though,
Mm-hmm.
but seems to not really appreciate Hammond very much
Yeah.
for turning him into what they did. And so it's just curious to me, though, because Hammond is still in possession of the source code.
Yeah.
And so I personally believe that Hammond does still have some control over Revenant in sort of a Davy Jones kind of a way where they have his heart, and so they kind of can tell him what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but he still sort of roams and does his own thing.
And if they don't already, once the information about that comes to light, then they'll be able to do that.
Exactly, and I think that he knows that, because when Loba blew up those labs after his source code was removed, he straight up says, "Are you trying to kill me, little girl?"
Yeah.
So he knew what she was trying to do. He knows that Hammond has the source code.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that possibly what happened is that Hammond wanted to send a representative of theirs into the games.
Yeah.
And they were going to send Forge. And Revenant saw this as his opportunity to get into the games, so he killed Forge, and Hammond rolled with it and said, "Okay, fine, Revenant, you go ahead into the games, but just remember, we have your head, and if you step out of line, if you do anything against us, then
We'll kill you."
we'll kill you." I think that Hammond still has control over Revenant, and that's why he's upset, is that they turned him into a monster and are now sort of holding his life in their hands.
Yeah.
And so for Hammond to be allegedly willing to trade Revenant's life
For this
artifact, assumingly, means it's got to be pretty valuable.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, I think, where we're going to go next, is just kind of, we're kind of wondering what that artifact could be, And so one of the speculations that we had was that in Revenant's the trailer where Revenant goes and kills Loba's parents, you see on his screen another simulacrum, which looks more like a female one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen other pictures of it in the kind of community, and I don't know if that's data mined information or just concept art, or maybe she's in Titanfall. She may be in Titanfall, but there's the picture of her in there, and so maybe this is something to do with that. Like, this is some sort of key to bring her in.
Exactly, yeah. And I also wonder if it's the key to fully destroying or fully controlling Revenant, because it's pretty clear that Hammond doesn't have full control over Revenant. Like he killed the person that they were planning on putting into the games, and they were probably like, we're disappointed in this, but you're gonna keep doing good work for us, or we're gonna kill you.
Yeah, I don't know that they have control over him so much as they can just blackmail him.
Exactly. That's what I mean, and so I have a feeling that that's the relationship between him and Hammond, and it's curious what this artifact is going to be and what Loba's plans are, because it's got to be pretty valuable if Hammond are willing to sacrifice Revenant for it.
Yeah.
And who knows, Hammond might not be willing to play the game at all. They just they want the artifact, and then they're gonna kill Loba. Like, you never know. It's just it's curious that Revenant in his dimension, felt the need to break this thing apart and hide it away. And so I feel like it could be a threat to Revenant, but then if that's the case, why is Hammond willing to trade the thing that is able to control or kill Revenant for killing Revenant?
Yeah.
So maybe that's not what it is. Maybe it's just happenstance that it's in that dimension. Um, yeah, it's it's definitely still a mystery.
Yeah.
But I think that we have a couple of good theories as to what
Yeah.
it could be and what it could lead to. I think that either way, this story piece isn't just going to be a one and done. Its implications are going to be canonical and are going to sort of lead forward. So I think
Yeah.
that whatever it is, it's gonna be important. Like
Yeah,
I feel like
especially like Wraith considers this now the worst timeline.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty significant.
and I think that it's likely that it could like it could send shockwaves throughout the rest of the lore moving forward, whether
Yeah.
that's changing the map, adding new characters. The other theory that we had
Yeah.
was that maybe this is some sort of a resurrection piece, because
Okay, yeah.
or like an amplifier to that, because we know that in the Fight or Fright universe, everyone are sort of these shadows, and we can recognize that now as Revenant's ability
His
to
totem.
his totem to sort of come back from the dead, or be preserved in that and then come back to life. And so it seems that in Revenant's Fight or Fright world, he was able to fully harness that technology and sort of enslave the legends as his zombies. And so it's possible that that has something to do with the ability to reanimate. And just to sort of go out on a limb, maybe Hammond wants that in order to move forward their simulacrum program, and B, resurrect Forge. And Forge was kind of a joke and a funny red herring, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's possible that they could bring him back.
Yeah, like,
because that's
and-
Hammond's thing. Hammond does sick experiments on people and makes their life forfeit. And so
And,
they-
and
I-
like, there
they
are
don't- they don't-
things in the game files for Forge. Like,
Exactly.
He does exist.
yeah, and so they don't seem like the kind of people that would very easily give up on an asset of theirs. And so if they see this opportunity to obtain this somewhat advanced technology that Revenant in his Fight or Fright dimension was able to amplify it and perfect it,
Yeah.
because we know that it exists in the home dimension because Revenant uses it, and that Hammond had that at some point because they made Revenant, but
Yeah.
maybe they need this more amplified form of it to try and resurrect someone in a more perfect way than how his totem does.
Yeah. Could be.
And so that's just another sort of that's some pretty wild speculation.
Yeah, another one that's a bit more wild is we were thinking that maybe we still don't really know that guy's name, but the guy that kind of runs
the guy who started the games.
Yeah.
His name is like Caesar or something.
Yeah.
Caesar or Romero.
What he has a name, but you
Is
see
there
him.
someone in real life named Caesar Romero?
I don't know. there's you see him in that trailer where he stabs the electric newspaper with his knife. That guy.
Yeah, he was from Titan.
And so maybe there's been people believe that maybe he's going to join the roster and go into the games himself. And so maybe it has something to do with higher up, and it's kind of just this someone else is pulling the strings. And so that's another theory we had. But
yeah, because Hammond has sort of bought its way into the Apex games.
Yeah.
And I think that more than anyone, Hammond is going to be sort of a main villain going forward.
Yeah, and I think also considering that this mission sequence is basically going to last until the end of the season.
Yeah.
And on the new seasons, that's when we see them roll out a new character, a new weapon,
exactly.
a new map. And so I think that by the end of this, it's going to be something pretty big.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's going to... It's likely
Whatever
going to
happens
it's likely
in
going to
season 6.
summon a new character,
Yeah.
or map changes, probably both.
Yeah.
And so
Well, yeah, because it's been a while since we've had a new map.
Yeah, like Kings Canyon just kind of got
Kings
smaller.
Canyon got
and
renovated
with
and
more
yeah.
construction.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we go to a new planet. I kind of hope so.
Yeah.
Because that's always exciting. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I was expecting a little bit more, but they expanded on Sing Labs a little bit more, which is, has to do with Wraith, but also Wraith and Crypto have been kind of tied since Crypto has entered.
It's not so much tied as just kind of their goals have been kind of parallel.
Yeah.
And in like what they need to do and where they need to do it have just kind of been around the same things.
Wraith in the Voidwalker sort of short film, I guess you could call it, she uses what appears to be like a Crypto sort of a software or hacking device, because it brings his little logo up on the screen, and you said that that Crypto had something that said Wraith on it.
On one of his screens, I think I saw.
Yeah, and so
I'd have to go through.
And there was also wasn't there a Crypto Easter egg hidden in the labs?
Yes, there was. That's where we first saw Crypto when he appeared in season 2.
Yeah, and so
there was the animation where he would come into the labs.
Yeah, on his screen, if that's what you're talking about, is that Wraith was the. I
don't know if it was somewhere else or if it was just that and I mistook it. But
okay, but yeah.
Yeah,
and so that's kind of our speculations on this. If you have any ideas of your own or any theories of your own, let us know.
Because we're quite interested in the lore. If there's other people, I know that there's lots of people that like the lore for this kind of stuff because it's great. But talk to us.
Yeah.
What do you think? Who do you think the snitch is?
Yeah, exactly.
But if I know that the one guy I watched kind of talked about this, is that we kind of want to keep away from the data mining for all this lore stuff.
Yeah.
Is because like it's week to week and we like no one wants to. It's fun to speculate and we don't want to spoil it or ruin it.
Exactly.
And so if you're one of the people that did data mine it, that's cool and that's your own agenda, but more so for the people that want to speculate.
Yeah, exactly.
Let us know what you're thinking.
Exactly. Like, we have certain strands of ideas. Let us know what you think about there only being 11 legends.
Yeah,
because
do you think that's a mistake?
We think
do you think it's purposeful?
We're curious about that because it was either Bloodhound or Gibraltar who was missing, and we don't know what that means.
Yeah, it could mean anything. What do you think that means?
Because everyone else was implicated somewhere.
Do you want to offer this?
I don't know. We transcribed the first one.
Yeah.
We don't know if
we can thought about posting it for a second, but then we kind of came to the decision that we don't want to post our transcription of it because since it's a week to week thing and it's unlockable. But then again, this is the prologue.
Yeah.
So maybe like let us know if that's something where we kind of ended up is you can let us know on Instagram or in our comments if you would like to if you would like us to send you our transcription of it, because we don't want to put it out to the public because maybe Respawn has plans for that, and so we don't want to mess with their lore.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not going to provide any of the story bits that are locked because I don't think that Respawn would appreciate that very much. But if
you don't want to have to go through the trouble of transcribing the prologue for yourself,
exactly, that's
and
just
you want
what
to be
I
able to
mean.
read
Then
let us know.
Just for analysis purposes, it's easier to have it in text, and that's why that's the only reason we'd be offering it, is because we went through the trouble. So if that's the purpose you want it for, because everyone can read the prologue, it's just for convenience sake that you would want it, and so that's the reason that we'd be offering it up. But yeah, I think that in conclusion, I think it's probably Loba.
I think that Loba's a pretty good suspicion.
I think it's probably Loba. If Octane is pulling some crazy switcheroo,
Professor Octane.
Like I could maybe see that. One other thing is that Kieran thought that maybe just one last time thing is that Kieran thought that maybe the snitching was kind of coming from sort of a higher level of the Apex games, and Bangalore has ties to the IMC and could potentially be friends with the runner.
So maybe she's telling them,
and so maybe she's telling him, and so on.
Anyways,
and so forth.
Thank you for watching. Do you have anything? Like and subscribe. Comment. Do lots of comments because we love to talk to people about this stuff.
Exactly.
And stay safe.
Yeah, definitely. Apex Legends!